Welcome back to the channel, fellow collectors, history buffs, and coin hunting enthusiasts, where every penny has a story and sometimes, just sometimes, that story is worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Today we are diving deep into one such extraordinary tale, one that surrounds the intriguing, undervalued yet astonishingly valuable 2001 D. Lincoln 1-cent coin. A humble copper-plated zinc cent that has emerged from the shadows of pocket change to claim its spotlight in the coin collecting world because of the rare and bizarre errors that make certain specimens worth up to $217 or even more depending on condition, rarity, and market demand. So buckle up and join us as we peel back the layers on what might at first glance look like an ordinary coin minted in Denver, but which, due to a wide array of minting mistakes, die anomalies, mechanical malfunctions, and planchet irregularities, has captured the interest of numismatists and error coin aficionados alike, because the 2001 D. Lincoln cent isn't just another mass-produced item in America's coinage, it's a small piece of metallic history riddled with quirks that elevate it into the realm of big money coins. Now what makes this penny from the early 2000s special begins with the condition of the dies used at the Denver Mint during that year, as many errors originated from either overuse, improper maintenance, or poorly executed hubbing processes that caused certain dies to develop imperfections, doubling, or misalignments, especially on the obverse side where Lincoln's portrait appears. These die-related issues led to what we call double die obverses or DDoS, and in 2001 D pennies, some collectors have discovered faint but definite signs of doubling on Lincoln's eye, beard, the word liberty, and the date itself, with some advanced examples showing ghost-like secondary images of these elements, which are not only rare but also instantly appealing to seasoned collectors who understand just how difficult it is to find modern double dies with strong, visible characteristics. But that's not the only type of error that makes the 2001 D. Lincoln cent a potential treasure in your coin jar, because this issue year also shows a relatively higher frequency of off-center strikes, where the planchet is not properly centered between the dies during striking, resulting in coins with part of the design missing and a blank crescent of metal visible, which, depending on the degree of off-centeredness, say, between 10 to 50%, and whether the date is still visible, can drastically impact value. And collectors love these anomalies because they clearly demonstrate the chaotic nature of the high-speed minting process where thousands of coins are struck per minute, making it miraculous for these flawed examples to escape quality control and make their way into circulation. And as we continue peeling back the layers of the 2001 D penny story, we find even more errors lurking beneath the surface, including broad strikes, where the coin is struck without the retaining collar that normally gives it its shape, causing it to expand outwards in a warped, oversized manner that collectors prize for its dramatic appearance. And then there are clipped planchet errors, where a portion of the coin is literally missing because it was punched from a flawed strip of metal, leaving behind clean, curved clips that add character and uniqueness to the coin. And when these clipped coins still show a full date and mint mark, their desirability and market value jumps significantly, often selling for more than $100 depending on condition. And then we have coins with die cracks or die chips. These occur when the dies themselves develop stress fractures or lose metal due to repeated use, causing raised, irregular lines or blobs of metal to appear on the finished coin, sometimes around Lincoln's eye, jawline, or along the rim of the coin. And while minor die cracks are relatively common, coins with dramatic or multiple cracks, especially ones that form shapes or extend across major design features, can spark bidding wars among collectors who specialize in die-state varieties. But perhaps the most coveted error found among 2001 D cents is the so-called cud error, where a piece of the die actually breaks off and leaves a void into which the planchet metal flows during striking, resulting in a solid, raised blob of metal that obliterates part of the coin's design, typically on the rim. And such dramatic errors instantly stand out and are easily visible even to the untrained eye, making them both collectible and easier to sell or appraise. And in addition to these visual anomalies, there are reports of 2001 D Lincoln cents struck on foreign or incorrect planches, such as dimes or planches intended for other denominations, which results in a coin that is either too light, too small, or has the wrong metallic composition, and these errors are extremely rare but immensely valuable, especially when authenticated by professional grading services such as PCGS or NGC. And speaking of grading, the condition or grade of your 2001 D penny can significantly affect its value regardless of errors, because a coin with a dramatic error in mint state condition, free of scratches, wear, and tarnish, will always fetch a higher price than the same coin that has been circulated and shows signs of wear. And this is where professional grading plays a vital role, because having your coin certified as MS64, MS65, or higher by a trusted third party not only boosts its credibility but also makes it more appealing to serious buyers and investors in the numismatic community. And we cannot overlook the importance of provenance and auction history when discussing the value of error coins like the 2001 D penny, because coins that have been featured in major auctions or written about in coin magazines or forums often command higher premiums simply due to their exposure and documented history. And it's this complex interplay between minting mistake, condition, market visibility, and collector interest that has driven the value of certain 2001 D Lincoln cents to $217 or more. And as with many era coins, the thrill of the hunt adds an intangible value to these pieces, because collectors don't just buy them, they discover them, often by searching through rolls of pennies from the bank, pocket change, or even inherited jars of old coins, and finding a valuable 2001 D era penny can be the moment that hooks someone into a lifelong passion for numismatics, turning a mundane cent into a story worth telling and a coin worth keeping. And what makes the 2001 D cent especially interesting is that it hails from a transitional era in US coinage, a time when the US Mint was ramping up production to meet the demands of commerce, using high-speed machinery and producing billions of coins per year, a process that naturally led to an increased rate of production. Errors, most of which were caught, but a few slipped through the cracks and now represent exciting opportunities for collectors. And despite being minted in enormous quantities, the survival rate of error coins is surprisingly low, especially for coins that remain in high-grade condition, meaning that for every known error variety in a collector's hands, there may be dozens more still hiding in circulation or tucked away in showboxes, waiting to be discovered. And so the 2001 D penny represents a fascinating paradox, a common coin with uncommon value, a mass-produced item that becomes a prized collectible because of the mistakes made during its creation. And for those of you watching who may be holding a handful of change right now, the story of the 2001 D should encourage you to look closer, examine each cent for abnormalities, compare them with known varieties, and learn the signs of valuable errors, because the potential is real, the discoveries are ongoing, and the market for error coins is thriving thanks to collectors like you who recognize that imperfection in coinage can lead to perfection in collecting. And even as more 2001 D era coins are discovered, their value remains strong because each era is unique, and that uniqueness is what gives them their charm and investment appeal. And as more people enter the hobby and awareness grows, demand continues to rise for authenticated era coins, which makes now an excellent time to search, learn, and perhaps even sell or trade these fascinating little mistakes for a healthy profit. So if you've made it this far, congratulations, you now know why the 2001 D Lincoln cent, worth just 1 cent to most people, can actually command a price of $217 or more on the collector's market, thanks to a rich variety of minting mistakes, planchette errors, die failures, and strike anomalies that together tell a story of production under pressure, quality control slipping, and accidental beauty that has been embraced by the numismatic community. Next, 1996 D1 cent USA coin. Today we take another deep dive into the fascinating, mysterious, and sometimes shockingly valuable world of rare coins and overlooked cents that are hiding right under our noses in jars, drawers, and pockets. And today's spotlight is on none other than the 1996 D Lincoln 1-cent coin, a coin that many pass off as ordinary, but which under the right conditions and with the right eras can command a value of up to $35 or more, which might not seem earth-shattering until you realize it's over 3,000 times its face value, and for a coin you might have unknowingly handled dozens of times in your daily life, that kind of appreciation is enough to turn a casual glance into a focused hunt, because as coin collectors, we know that what makes these coins truly valuable is not just the metal or the mint mark but the unique anomalies and production defects that transform a mass-produced currency into a prized possession. And with the 1996 D penny minted in the bustling Denver Mint facility during a time of high production volumes, there came a higher possibility of minting errors slipping through the cracks unnoticed, and these errors range from dramatic die clashes to subtle die breaks, from off-center strikes to double dies, from plating blisters to cut errors, and each of these possibilities opens the door to significant collector interest and monetary value, starting with one of the most sought-after errors in the 1996 D penny, the double die, especially double die obverse, or DDO, which can affect key parts of the design such as the date, mint mark, Liberty inscription, or even the motto, "In God We Trust," and while the doubling may be minor compared to earlier, more dramatic double die examples like the 1955 or 1972 cents, any doubling on a 1996 D is instantly valuable because it's scarcer and less documented, making it a prime target for collectors who specialize in modern errors. And then we move on to off-center strikes, a category of error that occurs when the blank planchette is not correctly positioned in the striking chamber, resulting in coins where part of the design is missing and replaced by blank space. And these coins are visually dramatic, easy to recognize, and highly desirable, especially when the date and mint mark are still visible, because visibility of those key identifiers is what anchors the coin's provenance and adds authentication confidence. And these off-center 1996 D cents can range in value depending on the degree of off-centeredness, typically between 10% to 90%, and their preservation, with collectors frequently paying over $35 or more for well-preserved examples with at least 40% off-centering and full legibility of the date and mint mark. And then we consider the broad strike errors, which happen when the collar die fails and allows the metal to expand freely outward during the strike, creating a larger-than-normal cent that often has a warped or stretched appearance. And these errors are particularly intriguing when they are nearly centered and show a clean strike despite the lack of a collar, with 1996 D broad strikes occasionally turning up in error collections and commanding premiums when authenticated by third-party grading companies. And speaking of authentication, it's important to remember that even relatively low-value errors like the $35 1996 D penny must be evaluated for authenticity, especially in an age where counterfeits and altered coins exist, and collectors are increasingly turning to trusted grading services such as PCGS, NGC, or ANAX to verify and encapsulate their finds, giving them both credibility and protection in the marketplace. And another fascinating error found among 1996 D cents is the die crack or die break error, a category that covers all forms of die deterioration which manifest as raised lines or blobs of metal on the coin. And while minor die cracks are fairly common in older coins, more dramatic or centrally located cracks, such as those running across Lincoln's face or along the coin's rim, can add a distinctive flair and attract error collectors, particularly when the cracks form recognizable shapes or span across several design elements. And in some extreme cases, these die cracks can develop into full-blown cut errors, where a piece of the die actually breaks off and leaves a blank void in the strike, resulting in a coin with a raised, blob-like section that covers part of the design, most often along the rim or near the edges of inscriptions. And cuds are beloved in the error collecting community for their dramatic appearance and clear visual uniqueness. and 1996 D cards have been documented with growing interest, particularly those that affect the date or part of Lincoln's portrait, as these examples have both visual appeal and diagnostic importance for those tracking the progression of die states at the Denver Mint. And another error that has increasingly been associated with 1996 D cents is plating blistering, a phenomenon more common in copper-plated zinc coins like those minted after 1982, where imperfections in the copper plating process result in raised bubbles or blisters on the coin surface, especially on the fields surrounding Lincoln's bust or the reverse design elements like the Lincoln Memorial. And while some minor plating blisters are considered mint-made and not necessarily collectible, larger or unusually placed blisters can create demand among collectors who seek examples of mint process flaws, especially when these blisters resemble other errors like die chips or retain their original luster despite the deformity. And that's not where the list of valuable possibilities ends, because there are also 1996 D Lincoln cents that have been discovered with strike-through errors, where a foreign object or debris, such as a piece of cloth, thread, or metal shaving, comes between the die and the planchette during the moment of striking, leaving behind a permanent impression or void on the coin's surface. And these strike-through errors are especially desirable when the object struck through leaves a recognizable shape or pattern, or when it significantly distorts design elements in a way that makes the error instantly noticeable. And beyond strike-throughs, we also have off-metal errors, though exceedingly rare, where the cent is struck on a planchette intended for another denomination, such as a dime or a foreign coin, and these errors result in underweight or smaller coins that are instantly suspicious and often sent in for authentication. And if a 1996 D cent were struck on a dime planchette, for example, it would weigh significantly less and lack a fully complete design, yet retain a clear date and mint mark, making it a major collector's item potentially worth hundreds depending on condition. And we must not overlook the existence of misaligned die errors, where either the obverse or reverse die was not properly centered at the time of striking, resulting in one side of the coin being off-kilter while the other remains properly aligned. And while minor misalignments are relatively common, significant ones, especially those creating partial collar strikes or railroad rim appearances, can become noteworthy and worth a premium. And it's in the combination of these various errors, their degrees of visibility, and the coin's condition that we find the most valuable 1996 D cents. Because while any one of these anomalies might raise the coin's value marginally, multiple overlapping errors can exponentially increase its collectability, such as a coin with an off-center strike and a card, or a coin with a dramatic die crack that also features a strike-through. And collectors are increasingly on the lookout for these multi-error coins because they are rarer and tell more complex stories about what went wrong during the minting process. And every collector knows that beyond the minting anomaly itself, the grade of the coin, the amount of wear, scratches, luster, and sharpness of strike, can have a substantial impact on the coin's value, with even common errors fetching 2 or 3 times more when preserved in mint state condition. And that's why it's essential for those hunting through rolls, jars, or inherited collections to handle their finds carefully and consider sending valuable-looking examples for grading, because even a $35 coin can rise to $100 or more if it's well preserved, particularly if demand increases or more attention is drawn to the error through media coverage or auction visibility. And the 1996 D penny holds a special place in modern numismatics not because of any single overwhelming error, but because of the sheer variety and number of subtle, unusual, and fascinating mint anomalies that exist within its population. And the best part is that these coins are still out there, circulating in the wild, waiting to be discovered by sharp-eyed enthusiasts who know what to look for. Last 1988 D1 cent USA coin. Today we are bringing you an in-depth exploration of a coin that may look small, ordinary, and easy to overlook, yet it packs a surprising amount of value thanks to minting anomalies and errors that collectors across the globe chase with incredible excitement and sharp-eyed determination. And that coin is none other than the 1988 D Lincoln 1 cent. A coin that in certain rare and fascinating conditions can be worth as much as $243 or even more depending on the uniqueness and clarity of its errors, the condition of the coin, and how it stands out in the eyes of collectors who know that sometimes it's the imperfect coins that become the most perfect additions to a well-curated collection, because the 1988 D-cent, struck at the Denver Mint during a transitional and high-output year, is known for more than just its mint mark and copper-plated zinc composition. It's also known for a series of remarkable and often overlooked minting mistakes that can dramatically increase its value in today's collector market, starting with one of the most famous and highly pursued anomalies found in the 1988 D issue, the transitional reverse design, specifically the 1988 D with the 1989 reverse, which is one of the clearest and most well-documented design mismatches in modern US coin history. And this mix-up occurred when the reverse die intended for the 1989 Lincoln Memorial Cent, which features subtle but critical changes in the FG initials, the designer Frank Gasparo's initials, located near the right base of the memorial, was mistakenly used to strike coins in 1988, leading to a variety where a 1988 D obverse is paired with a reverse design meant for 1989. And this anomaly is significant not only because it's a clear example of a transitional design error, but also because the diagnostics that identify it, such as the shape and positioning of the FG initials, are visible under magnification and recognized by major grading agencies, adding legitimacy and competitive value to this cent, which has sold in graded condition for as much as $243 or more at auction. And beyond this famed transitional error, the 1988 D cent is known to appear with several additional error types that only further increase its appeal and value, including double die errors on both the obverse and reverse, with the most prominent ones affecting the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust," where subtle doubling or ghost images become visible upon close inspection. And while these doubled dies are not as dramatic as those from older eras like the 1955 or 1972 issues, they are still highly desirable due to their rarity and the specificity with which they occurred, often tied to isolated die pairings that were used only briefly before being replaced. And then there are off-center strikes, one of the most visually distinct and collectible error types found on any modern coin, including the 1988 D cent, where coins may have been struck with the planchette not properly centered in the striking chamber, resulting in partial design cutoffs and a crescent of blank metal. And the value of these off-center coins is heavily influenced by how far off-center the strike is and whether the date and mint mark remain visible, with coins showing 30% to 60% off-center strikes and retaining full date and mint mark commonly reaching values near or above $100, especially when preserved in uncirculated condition. And moving further into error territory, we find broad strikes, which occur when the retaining collar that helps form the rim fails or is absent, allowing the coin to spread beyond its normal boundaries and take on a wider, flatter appearance while still preserving much of the design detail. And 1988 D broad strikes, though not as commonly found as those from other years, are known among error specialists and frequently draw attention for their unusual shape and the clean, open margins that distinguish them from typical cents. And we also must not overlook die cracks and die chips, common but variable errors that appear as raised lines or blobs on the surface of the coin due to stress fractures or imperfections in the die. And on 1988 D cents, these errors can appear in various locations, from small chips in Lincoln's hair or eye to more dramatic cracks along the rim or through lettering. And when these cracks become large enough or combine with other flaws, they can result in cut errors, which occur when a piece of the die breaks away entirely and leaves a void that fills with planchette metal during the strike, resulting in a coin with a large, raised blob, usually at the rim but sometimes intruding onto the design itself, making these coins both distinctive and sought after, especially by collectors who appreciate major die failure coins. And certain examples of 1988 D cents with cut errors have been known to fetch premium prices when combined with high-grade condition or additional errors. And speaking of grade, The condition of a coin plays a massive role in its overall value, with coins graded MS64, MS65, or higher often bringing significantly more than the same coin in circulated condition, even with identical errors, because mint state coins show the sharpest details, cleanest fields, and most dramatic error definition, all of which contribute to collector interest and auction results. And grading services such as PCGS and NGC offer encapsulation and authentication that can turn a raw error cent into a certified, market-ready collectible with much broader appeal and resale potential. And then we have clipped planchette errors, where part of the coin is missing due to the blank being punched out from a strip of metal too close to a previous punch, creating a curved or straight clip that interrupts the circular form of the coin. And when found on 1988 D cents, these clipped planchets are valuable not just for their odd appearance but also for their rarity and desirability, especially when the clip is dramatic and the coin retains full readability of the date and mint mark, which ensures it remains identifiable and collectible. And another fascinating type of error occasionally reported on 1988 D cents is the strike-through error, which occurs when a foreign object like grease, thread, or even another coin fragment comes between the die and the planchette during striking, leaving an impression or void that permanently distorts the design. And strike-through errors vary widely in appearance and value depending on what was struck through and how visible the impact is. But in cases where dramatic shapes or deep impressions are left, these coins can easily exceed $100 in value when authenticated. And misaligned die errors also play a role in the 1988 D cents reputation for collectible mistakes, where the obverse or reverse die was improperly aligned, leading to one side being off-centered while the other remains aligned, often resulting in a tilted or tilted hub appearance. And though minor misalignments are common and not especially valuable, more dramatic examples that involve significant rotation or strike imbalance can draw higher interest and sales. And another extremely rare but incredible error type that has appeared on some 1988 D cents is the wrong planchette error, where a cent is struck on a planchette intended for another denomination or even another country's coinage, leading to coins that are underweight, discolored, or unusually small. And these are among the rarest and most valuable error types because they require multiple levels of mint malfunction to occur. First, the wrong planchette must enter the press, then it must avoid detection, and finally it must escape into circulation. And when these conditions are met and the coin is discovered, collectors are often willing to pay hundreds or even thousands depending on how unusual the mismatch is and how well preserved the coin remains. And some collectors even specialize in wrong planchette errors due to their rarity and intrigue. And all of these error types, from minor die chips to major off-metal strikes, combined to make the 1988 D Lincoln cent one of the most fascinating and potentially valuable coins from the late 1980s, especially when you consider that billions were struck that year, meaning the odds of finding something rare might seem low. But with such high volume comes the increased chance of minting mistakes slipping through quality control, which is why roll hunters and error enthusiasts continue to sift through rolls of pennies looking for that one overlooked gem, the 1988 D cent with just the right error, the right level of preservation, and the right story to command a market value that far exceeds its humble origins. And it's this hunt, this treasure-seeking spirit, that keeps the hobby alive and thriving, because every coin has a chance to be the one. And the 1988 D, with its transitional design mystery, known double dies, wide variety of strike errors,